All right, and welcome back to another episode of the Self-Directed Podcast. I have a very exciting conversation today. With us as a guest today, we have Jada Jones, who is podcast, YouTube, influence extraordinaire. But her story is something that is near and dear to Praxis. And for our listeners out there, I'm excited to get into the story, share her story about being very deliberate about how she's approached her education, her career, making the choice to leave high school early. And we'll get to all this in just a little bit. Jada, welcome to the Self-Directed Podcast.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I love podcasting. You know the vibe. And yeah, I'm excited to get into some conversation today.
That's great. So Jada, just as we start out, what are you doing today? For all our listeners out there, how would you describe what you do in a nutshell? Sure. I'm sure you've gotten that question, before too, yeah. with your choice and be deliberate of like, how do you explain what you do to people? Right. So Definitely. Let's start there.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Jada. As Mitchell said, I do a lot. I think being a content creator and a dancer, performer, and podcaster, and just everything, and being a multifaceted person, it's very difficult sometimes to be like, oh, I'm XYZ, or like I'm an accountant, It's hard to do that kind of moment. But I think that I just always explain to people, like I truly just use this time with the finite time that we have on this earth to just live the life that I want to live. And it sounds kind of interesting because it's like, well, then you think about all the money and like XYZ and all the things that you think you should be doing with this linear life, but it's not linear at all. So yeah, I graduated high school a year early and I moved straight to New York City to pursue my career. And then COVID happened. And I think COVID really did show everyone that just kind of no one's life is linear and, everyone's life is finite. And it was just kind of like a wake up call to just achieve your dreams essentially, or like do whatever you need to do in this lifetime that self-fulfills you. So that's who I am, but we'll get more into all of the stuff later. So I won't go on.
Yeah, no, that's a great jumping off point. But I love several things that you said there. One is this idea of like, it doesn't have to be linear. Like I think that, we all grow up in this kind of traditional education model, or a lot of us were told, hey, there are these very linear steps toward the safe, stable, happy life. But then you look out in the world and there's all these people who feel, you talk to people and they're like, I wish I was doing something else. I don't love my job. And it's like, it doesn't have to be that way. You can go chase your dreams. I almost don't like the question I asked you either of like, what do you do? Because it's almost more like, what makes you come alive? I know that content creation, but like of the different things you have your hands in, like what is kind of at the core of all of your different passions? Like what is that thing that gives you the fire that you have?
Yeah, I've asked myself this question for years on end, and being so young and kind of figuring that out so early on, it's like, I feel like I still have a base. Like, I'm glad that I know where my core is, but also there's so much self-discovery to keep going, like with how many ever years that we've got left, and it's important to realize that it's okay to not have all the answers right now. But the one answer that I do have for just kind of the core of everything that I do. So I'm a performer. I do acting, dancing, singing, all that stuff. And also YouTube and content creation. So it's a lot of like working with self, so it does get lonely at times. So my main driving force for everything is human connection. And I talk about it all the time, but I really enjoy being able to connect with an audience. And, content creation in itself, like you're literally putting content out on the internet for other people to watch. So it would be interesting if you're just like, well, I'm not a people person, or like, it's, you engage with everyone. I know my most fun times that I've had with, my audience and whatnot, it's always like going on live streams or, even I've done like Zoom calls with like a group of people. I'm just like, hit the code and like everyone join and we'll just talk, or we'll like play like online games and like whatever. And it's just really interesting that like the internet can literally do something like that and bring people together. I just enjoy, I mean, even living in New York City, I was always the person that I'm on a subway and I'll just strike up a conversation with someone, because why not? Like, you know, I'm that type of person. A lot of people are not, and that's okay. But I think that like my driving force with everything, I just love connecting with people, even if it's on set or on stage, and all of that stuff, just like bringing art together and bringing creation and all that stuff together and doing the thing. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And it's cool that you have figured out at least that much, and not just figured out, hey, this is the thing I like to do, and kind of is the fire I have, but that at your age and stage in life, you've already figured out a way to go pursue that in so many different facets of, like, you know, building your life and building a career, doing the thing that you love doing. And I think that a lot of times it's almost, we almost like figure out our passions too late, or we figure out how to go pursue those too late in life. And it's like, we gotta go figure out how to go to school to get closer to this thing. But you figure out a way to like bypass that altogether and go do the thing you love immediately. So yeah, I want to get a little bit more into that story itself and rewind the clock a little bit. So a few years ago, you decided to finish high school early, to go out on your own, to kind of like bet on yourself and give yourself the freedom to go explore ideas and yourself more. Where did that come from? Where did your kind of like journey and your own personal motivation to go make a unique decision like this, where did that come from?
I think I'll say that I've always been a pretty independent and driven person, and also in a sense where I don't really care what people think. Yeah. Coming from a performing arts high school, it was already pretty, I don't know, open-minded in a sense that, you know, like if you want to become an actor, like go and do the thing. But even then, I will say that I was still, I feel like one of the outliers that actually went to pursue the thing, like right after. I mean, considering all the training that we had, I just felt like it was a no-brainer to just kind of continue learning exactly what I learned, given this, you know, free education that was so great and so amazing. And actually applying that into the real world to do exactly what they taught us to do in my performing arts high school. So it never made sense to me why people who wanted to pursue musical theater or whatever they may be, like whatever art that we studied, to continue to pursue that instead of actually like in college when you learned all of that stuff. You can take classes outside of school, but I think it was so pressurized still, even in our school, to go to college. I mean, I had phenomenal grades. I was at the top of my class, and I was still at the top of my class when I skipped the grade. So I was in the top of the class that I skipped the grade into. And everyone was just genuinely confused as to why I wasn't going to pursue higher education immediately after high school. But I mean, it was a no-brainer to me because I graduated early on a whim. It wasn't something that I had planned since I was in 5th grade. It wasn't that whole moment. Yeah. It was truly like my junior year, I was like, I have enough credits. I've taken enough like early summer classes. I just did so many extra random things just because. And I realized that like, I know exactly what I want to do. Yeah. And for some people, that's not the case, and that's completely okay. But for me, my personal journey, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. So it just seemed fitting to just go ahead and try a year. And even then, like right after, if I'm like, oh, actually, I do want to go to college. Actually, I'm really interested in this. Then I'd go and do it. And obviously I'm still not. So I mean, yeah. And I never look down on college. I think it's a really, really good thing for some people, but it's also not a good something for other people. And I think that, you know, other options need to be available. So I think as soon as I graduated, I was like, what am I going to do? And I knew I wanted to go to New York City again. And I just found a way to make it happen. I will say that I had so much support from my family and the people around me, even if they wanted the best for me and wanted me to go to college. I mean, I do know even my mom was like, are you sure? Like, you don't want to go? Like, you know, like that whole moment. And and I let her know, I was like, Mom, you've got nothing to worry about. And I think that also came from a lot of self-confidence that I had. Yeah. I mean, it's so difficult when you're 17 or 18 and it's like people are shoving down your throats, like you need to know exactly what you want to do right now. And it's looked down upon to either change your ideas or change any type of trajectory because you're supposed to go and know exactly what you want. And I find that absolutely insane. You're still growing, you're still changing, you're still growing and doing the thing and figuring out what you want to do. And And it's okay to have different thoughts and opinions. And that's why so many people drop out, or so many people change majors, and so many people do exactly what they end up wanting to do. And I'm just glad and grateful that I was able to figure out what I wanted to do so early on. And I was headstrong enough to pursue that directly after high school. So,
Yeah, I love so many different parts of that. One of the things that we at Praxis, I mean, we work with young adults all over who are, I would say they're usually a little bit farther along. They didn't drop out of high school occasionally, but mostly they're on the cusp of that decision of, okay, I finished high school. Everybody's telling me to go to college, and like, maybe I don't feel like that's the right next step for me, or have dropped out of college. And it's that, how do I figure out what I want to do phase? What's the best environment for me to do that in? And I love that you've documented your process. So so many other people out there who are in that age and stage of their journeys, they have something to look through, something tangible, and a story to relate to and get pointers from. In one of your early videos in your Not in College Diaries playlist and collection there, you talk about, which I think this is awesome. You talk about, kind of having that realization of, hey, I have all these credits, and going into the counselor's office and being like, hey, here's what I want to do. It's my education. I can have a say in that. And I wanted to ask you, like, did you get a lot of pushback in your school for making that decision to kind of customize your own education experience?
I have to think back, because honestly, it's like a part of me that I'm like tucked away now. And then I'm wait, let me unpack that. Let me see. I will say that it was very half and half. I think it was very easy, because I think some of my friends even were also interested in possibly graduating, hearing that I was going to do it. And they got pushed back. And I think you just have to push so hard, because it is your education. And I think if they see the uncertainty like in you, they're less willing to kind of help you figure that out, unless you're just like, I want to do this. I mean, I had some of my favorite teachers tell me, why don't you just stay for a senior year? Like, all I needed left was one English course, and that's it. That's it. Man. And I would have stayed a whole senior year to take English. And then since it was a performing arts high school, I would have taken musical theater, dance. And then they were like, and then you can start taking classes at like CPCC, which is like a community college. And, like, I really did consider that option for a bit. And that's what I was going to do, because there was this whole loophole of a thing. It was like, I wanted to take AP Lit, which is like the fourth like highest English or whatever. And then, but they said that I couldn't do that halfway through the year, because it was halfway through the year and I decided to graduate early. They were like, you can't do that. You also can't they made this new rule. Like, they just kept shifting the rules for no reason, but they were like, you can't take a class, that's offered here on campus online. And I found that so weird, is because they had a lot of weird things going on with kids taking online classes and whatever, but I just found a loophole. So halfway through the year during the semester, I was like, well, I can't join any of the English classes right now that are on campus, because they've already been halfway through. So I went to my principal and I was like, hey, this is my last like little thing that I've got to get done here. Can I please take it online? Like, so I didn't get to take AP Lit, because it was a whole year course. So I just ended up taking English 4 and being done with it, honors English 4, and I was done. I was like, I'm done. And that's it. And that's all I needed. But it was such a difficult task to, get through so many people. So I can understand if someone gets like the first no, they're like, yeah, it's not going to happen. Because that's what happened to me. I was going to stay for that extra senior year to just whatever, and then like have a senior year but I don't have to do anything, but I was like, what's the fun in that? Like, so that's kind of what happened. I will say I have supportive teachers and supportive school members and whatnot, but I feel like even them, I feel like some people there is like, they don't really enjoy their jobs. Like North Carolina has the worst pay system for teachers. So it's like a lot of them don't even enjoy their jobs. So it's like seeing someone trying to pursue their own career, obviously it's scary for them, and they want to have that like feeling of, I want you to be successful. And I'm like, I want to do this. So why can't I do this? So I can understand from a perspective of a counselor or a teacher, absolutely, why they're scared. I mean, that makes sense, but also it's like that it's what matters to you and what you want to do. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and to a degree, I mean, my mom's a teacher, my sister-in-law is a teacher, my aunt's a teacher. Like I grew up in a household of teacher. And I
Got
think,
it all.
you know, so I think to a degree, it's not so much of, hey, I want to squash your dreams. It's we want you to help. We want to help you as a student avoid big mistakes. And so I think a lot of teachers do mean well, likely any system. There may be some that aren't great, but outside of the school system itself, what I am curious to get is your take about how you navigated those conversations, telling the people closest in your lives, your friends, your family. I know like this is a big thing for people anybody who wants to take a non-traditional route or a more self-directed approach to education is navigating those conversations, especially when people mean well, but they may have the shock value of you saying, hey, I want to do something different. How did you go about getting through to those people? And like, I guess, how did you have success going into those conversations, coming out of them and getting support for your own kind of self-directed approach?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, now I really have to think back of like, what happened during those years? Yeah. I will say that I first opened the conversation with my parents just because they're the closest to me. They support me in everything that I do. I mean, it's hard to say this because then it's like, oh, then everyone can go and do it, you know, but it has to start with you first, and you have to have that conversation with yourself first. Otherwise, no one else is going to believe you. But and that's the thing, when you believe in yourself enough, no one else has to believe in you in order to go and do your thing, because you believe in yourself so much and you know that you will be exactly where you want to be. So, I mean, taking from me personally, I knew that I had worked my ass off the entire, I remember doing a whole senior exit project that was supposed to go over the course of the junior and senior year, and I had to do it all in 1 year. So like I did all the work and did all the stuff, and it just didn't make sense as to why, if someone didn't believe in me at that point, I was like, okay. And like, because I had already done everything, it's like no one's word was going to stop me, even if it was my parents. And that's a very hard thing to say because I do have supportive parents. Yeah. I mean, I have such supportive parents, and that's the thing. So I can see where some people are like, my parents don't believe in me. My parents, blah, 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 blah. And at the end of the day, you have to know exactly what you want without anything, because at the end of the day, you have you, and that's it. And that's a hard thing to do when your entire life, especially like your high school lives, the most pivotal moment, like, you know, you're surrounded by four walls with the same people, the same ideas, the same XYZ. So whenever a foreign idea comes in, it's like, you don't want to, it's too scary, you know, like, so yeah, I mean, I really did just open the conversation with, hey, I think I'm going to graduate early. And my mom, honestly, I mean, she was like, go for it. Like, I mean, there was nothing really deep about it. She was like, well, like, it makes sense. And we didn't even have a conversation about what was going to happen after yet. We never even had that conversation, honestly. I don't remember talking about it. And then I just inquired with one of my counselors, and I was like, hey, like, is there a way to graduate early? And she was like, well, you have this credit, you have all these credits, blah, blah, blah. I was like, so yes, is the answer, right? She was like, well, I think you should stay and like do this and this. And even my musical theater teachers told me, I think you should stay. And also like, I was pretty top tier in their program. So obviously it looks good to have someone stay till the entire, 7 years and whatnot. So I get it. I totally get it. But also I'm like, don't you want me to like go and pursue this thing so that I can come back and like do the thing for you guys, And yeah, so I personally, I don't think it was that difficult on my end, but I will say that some of my friends didn't really have success with that because it seemed scary. It seemed too scary. So it's like, they brought up the conversation, but at some point they were like, I think it's best that I stay. And guess what? That's totally fine. If that's what you believe that was best for you, roll tide, 1000%, go for it. But like me, I'm like, if I want to go and do it, then I'm going to go and do it. And that's what I did. So yeah.
I think a big takeaway there that I think is admirable and I like though is the self-confidence that you had. It going into those conversations, it went from permission to possibility. It's instead of going in and saying, can I do this? It's how can I do this? And I think that's huge. That because like you've already committed to the outcome you want, here's where I want to be. And I think that, so many people, they go into those conversations with what you said. It's like, I have a little bit of self-doubt, or I'm a little bit wavering about this decision. And so the weight of every no or obstacle that somebody throws in the way, it makes it that much harder to be like, hey, wait, am I sure that I want to do this? Am I like confident I can work this out? But your self-confidence, I mean, it's evident in this conversation, but too, like some of your videos talking about the decision to do it, you're like, I know that I was going to be successful.
Yeah.
Have you always kind of had that level of self-confidence, or what were some of the things that you feel like you can point to, like, hey, that was a big moment for me?
Yeah. Okay. We're gonna get a little personal here, I guess. But
okay.
I think, I mean, when I was younger, I will say like elementary school and middle school, Jada had a lot of like, I'm not really sure who I am, but I know I love the arts. I know I love content creating. And those were things that I was certain about. And when you just kind of start to, I guess, make things like every single time that you kind of do something and you succeed at it, it doesn't matter how little it is. It could be just like scoring a meeting with someone, or it could be you landed a triple turn, which I have no idea if you know what that means, but it's great. But it's like, or you like do something, it's like those small little things just kind of give you more and more confidence, and you kind of just continue to build up. So as I continue to train and dance and train and whatever the heck else I was doing, like everything that I was doing, it just kind of was like another like tick on the side of like, yeah, like that's successful, you know. But guess what? There are also failures, and that happens. And I think it's so that's a thing that, I mean, that was hard for me to learn. It's still a learning process, and it's still a learning curve. But even like yesterday, I didn't have that great of a day, you know, and it's having to turn back to my successes and being like, but look how far you've come. And I think honestly, my YouTube channel has done so much of that for me. And it's like one person could be watching, 1,000 people could be watching. It doesn't really matter. But like having that for my own personal like journey and whatnot, it really is a physical, visual evidence that like you've gone somewhere, you know. I think, I mean, I'm not saying everyone should start a YouTube channel, but I'm saying that like when you kind of look back, you have to understand where you came from and realize that like 5 years ago, you wanted to be exactly where you wanted to be right now. Like here I am, and I'm like, oh, I want to achieve this and this and this and this. But also younger me wanted to be exactly where I am right now. And I am, and that's so huge, and that should be celebrated. And, you know, like, I feel like we can be so hard on ourselves sometimes and be like, oh, like I suck. I failed at this. I didn't get this audition. But I mean, really and truly, I'm in an industry where rejection is a part of the journey. Like you don't just book every single role that you audition for. You don't get every single thing that you want in this industry. Otherwise everyone would be killing it, you know? And it takes rejection, and it takes failure, and it takes like learning from those, instead of being like, oh, that happened to me, you know, like, oh, that happened to me, they didn't like me, to turning that and being like, that happened for me. It wasn't for me, and something else is for you. You know what I'm saying? So learning that whole ball game, I think, has just given me the confidence. I mean, but also, I mean, I have days where I'm like, oh, this sucks. Like, you know, I don't know if this is great, but, you know, but I never doubt that enough to a point where it actually like takes me out of the game. You know, this is a game. Life is a game. You just got to play it the way that you play it, and that's it, you know? So, I mean, I will say that in high school, I had a lot of mature experiences that I feel like I had to grow up really fast. I was in a really, really long relationship for like 4 years that grew me up so fast. And even like that after going out of that and figuring that out, is like, that really did give me the self-confidence as well to keep going, because dude, like if you can get through like a really hard like relationship that like no one even believed in high school, or like, you know, when people look down in like high school, they're like, oh, it's like kitty love, you know, it's the whole moment. But it's like when you actually, you know, like grow up through something like that and experience so much through something like that, it's really hard to just kind of go back to where you were mentally and physically and like everything. So even that, like that matured me so much, and just all the experiences that I had with friends and losing so many friends. I mean, when I said I was graduating early, I lost more friends than I did gain any. So and it was just really, you knew who was on your side and who was on your battlefield in that moment. And that's all I needed. And it wasn't something that ever like made me like, oh, I'm going to lose friends, maybe I should stay one more year. It's like that. It just doesn't make any sense now. Like looking back, it's like that would have never been an option for me anyway. So yeah, I feel like a combination of just all my life experiences and YouTube and growing up and having internet friends at such a young age and seeing perspective and traveling and being multicultural and multi-ethnic and whatever. It's like you learn so much, and that's where that confidence came from, I guess. Like, I think there's your answer.
No, there's lots of high points, but I think, you know, one of the parts I like is like part of it is staying in the game, you know, getting back up whenever you do have a failure. I'm sure, you know, even, you know, looking at the decision to do something different, leave high school earlier, you probably encountered a lot of no's, like fighting through that, being true to yourself. That bodes well for the industry that you're in, where, like you said, rejection is part of the game. And in a sense, that's a filter. It's a filter. And like, how bad do you want it? If you're willing to show up and keep going to auditions and like, keep putting yourself out there, eventually it's going to work out, especially if you also have that confidence. So let's fast forward on the timeline a little bit and get to, you know, you making that transition from, this is the year I would have been in high school. Instead, I am betting on myself. I've given myself a year of freedom to go explore what's out there, do my own thing. What was that year like? You know, what were the high points? Did you have a plan going into it? Was it more of like, let's just see what happens?
Yeah. So I graduated, and after that, really and truly, it was the scariest moment of my life. I was like, dude, like, we're already here. There's no, like, you can't re-enroll back in high school. Once you have that diploma, that's just not going to happen. So I was like, you just got to keep moving forward. Like, you know, and I mean, I spent about a month and a half being like, what am I doing? What am I doing? I knew I wanted to go to New York City. I didn't know how. I was like, money's a thing. Like, we got to line up stuff. Like, I wasn't signed to an agency at that point. I was like, just so many things. And I was like, I have so many goals. Just how do I get there? You know? And it was just this lingering question. And I think that can be the scariest part, is just like not knowing what's in the unknown. And that's why it's so easy to commit to college or to commit to something that you can see 4 years into, because you know you'll have a certain group of friends. You'll know exactly where you'll be in 4 years. Whereas in that moment, all my friends who were going to universities, I didn't know what my next week was going to look like. I didn't know how I was going to have a hot girl summer and like do the thing, because I didn't know what was going on even like 2 months down the road. I didn't know where I was going to be. And that's a really scary moment, because I mean, I can see that could be a really big fear for so many people, you know? And I think I just spent a lot of time still content creating, still doing the thing, but still not knowing where the heck I was going to go, where I was going to be. So I think it took a one-way ticket to New York for like 2 weeks, you know, just to be like, hey, let's see what this is like. So I went to go and stay with my friend that just like has a place up there for 2 weeks. And I just like roamed around. That was the first time I had been on a plane by myself, and just explored New York City. Like, I learned the subway very quick. I learned all this stuff very quick. And when you just kind of throw yourself into something like that, you're never ready for anything. You're not even ready to go to college, like, let alone, you know, like do something like that. And it's like, you really just have to go and do it, or like do something, you know, or work and then find a way to like road trip or do something, like do anything that gets you slightly closer to your goal. And for me, that was taking a 2-week trip to New York City. And I learned a lot there. And as soon as I came back, I was like, okay, now how do we get back up there? Like, how do we do that? And it's so funny, because I think I had worried so much about it and how it was going to go and how I was going to find a place and X, Y, Z. And then I just realized that, you know, just let it go. Things will fall into place exactly how they need to be. And, you know, I believe strongly in just the law of attraction and just like energy and how people interact and everything that deals with that. And I truly believe that everything lined up perfectly, because it was scary as to how specific my job ended up being. And someone from Charlotte, from my hometown, someone that I grew up with a year under me, her voice teacher booked the job at like the Metropolitan Opera, and she had just given birth to her son. And so she needed her son to go with her, because, you know, she needs to breastfeed, do the whole moment. But the dad had to stay, so he couldn't come. So she wanted someone from Charlotte to come and live in like nanny with her for like 3 months and just like audition while I'm there. She wanted someone who like just graduated out of high school. Like, it was crazy. It was the exact thing that like I needed in order to
almost
get that
scary,
to go up
almost
there.
scary coincidental. Yeah,
no,
like, this is not a sign. I don't know what it is.
Exactly. So it was such a random. We love
all right.
LA traffic. It's okay. So my dad was like, hey, like so and so, like just mom just like messaged me on Facebook, and was like, hey, like Jada might be interested in this, and she just like posted something on Facebook. Didn't know her at the time, the lady or whatever, but like we became sisters and just so close. And that was a really huge moment in my life, just knowing that the world is your oyster. Like you just got to go and do your thing, So seeing something like that, I just don't believe in coincidences anymore. I really do think when you're in the mental state of just like, it's going to work out for me. Yeah, you can stress here and there and whatever, but if your overall mentality is like, I know things are going to work out and be okay, that just came out of nowhere. They're just things that you don't know that you don't know sometimes. And that was that moment for me. And I went to New York City for 3 months and like lived the life. And then I moved back up there in January. I came back for like a month for, break and whatnot. And then I went back up there with my dad, who had just retired. Like we had all like encouraged him to retire early. And he did, and he made it happen for him. And it's like, goals don't stop for anybody, it doesn't matter what stage of life you're at. It's like, he retired early and that was so huge for him. And just kind of that energy that you surround yourself around, it's like things just keep happening for you. Like, yeah, there's failures and yeah, there's downfalls, but things just keep happening for you eventually. And yeah, so that happened, and then COVID happened. So it was almost great that I didn't even enroll in college that year, because it just made, and then all my friends didn't get their senior year. And it was just so crazy to see how things just kind of lined up like that. Like really and truly, I felt like I had just lucked out, So yes, I think I answered your question.
No, you did. I mean, that's got to be validating. I think that sometimes when you start heading down that path, whether at the onset, whether you have that validation at the onset that I know this is going to work out, you can have the confidence and self confidence that I'm going to make this work out. But it's almost funny. I feel like sometimes when you start taking those steps down the path that you feel inside, I think this is the right one. How sometimes it feels like the entire universe is conspiring on your behalf to make it happen. Yeah. And I think it's those first few steps though, where you can't see very much farther out than, 1 or 2 steps, and everything else is dark. Those are the scariest steps to take. So more power to you for doing that. And I think that's such an awesome story of what are the odds that, all of these kind of conditions were met. Yeah. So as you think back to, not just that year of, hey, I'm going and doing this kind of scary thing. I'm taking a leap of faith. I'm betting on myself, but not just that, even to where you are today. What are some things that you've done to help support your own personal, professional development, kind of keep yourself on the right track, surround yourself with the good energy you're talking about? Yeah, like what are some things that, people should be mindful of? Like, hey, if I'm going to go down a scary path and bet on myself, here are some things I can do to support myself on that journey.
For sure. That's such a great question. I feel like, again, I will always say it, but it starts with you, and it starts with the thoughts that you're filling your brain with. And if that means the people that you're surrounding yourself around, and it's not really supporting you, it's time to get rid of it. Like, it is just time to get rid of it. And it's a disservice to you and a disservice to everyone around you if you keep surrounding yourself around people that aren't going to make you your best self. And it's as simple as that. I mean, I have friends that I loved dearly that I will still love from a distance. And I loved what we had and the time that we needed to have it. And that was it. And that's okay. I think sometimes when we're in high school, we think, oh, we're supposed to like be best friends for the rest of our lives. And while you might be, and that's great, it just doesn't happen for many people. And that's okay. You outgrow people, you outgrow ideas from other people, and they outgrow you and you outgrow them. And that's okay. It's okay to realize that sometimes no one has to be in the wrong. It's just, you're not compatible anymore. And that's okay. And so I had to learn that, because otherwise it was just going to be holding on to a ton of ideas that no longer served me. I mean, I just genuinely grew up faster than everybody else. And I had to know that. Otherwise, I was just going to stay in my small pond as a big fish, and it just didn't make sense. So that was the first thing. Second thing, I read a lot. I surrounded myself around the ideas that I knew that I needed. I watched YouTubers that I truly admire that now I'm like friends with today. So it's just so crazy, because it's like, things you just keep surrounding yourself around things that you believe that you should be surrounded by, and that's it. So, I mean, I read a lot, definitely during COVID for sure. Like I really got into like a reading game, and just like a lot of self-reflection. Again, I mentioned that earlier, but it's important to see where you've come from and realize that you want it to be exactly where you want it to be today. And whether if that's even like you still have a roof over your head, like just expressing gratitude for the smallest things is just, that's an accomplishment in itself, just being able to sit here and be like, I'm breathing and I'm rolling and it's fine. So yeah. And then when you just kind of also just don't take things too seriously, like, I mean, that's a really big thing, because I mean, if you just overanalyze absolutely everything and forget about the bigger picture and that everyone's just kind of floating on a rock in space, like when you kind of forget that, it's like you just overanalyze everything and just, and it just gets so, you stress yourself out for no reason. There's no reason to worry twice. So you just need to just keep moving on and, and just take day by day. Just don't make things too serious. So yeah, really and truly those like 3 things, just like cutting out friends, just not worrying about things too much, and just self-reflection, reading, just bettering yourself. So yeah.
Yeah. I love so many different parts of that. It makes me think of Jim Rohn, who's a old school, like famous motivational speaker. He says you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time around. I think the same thing is
very
like
true.
The 5 ideas you spend the most time around. You've heard different variations of it, I'm sure. So as you think back to like some of those positive influences, both either content creators that you've now become friends with, or books or authors or podcasts, what have been some of like, the 2 or 3 like biggest pieces that you've been like, hey, this really helped with my mindset? These are books or ideas or people that, anybody on their own journey should go follow.
Yeah. Okay. Number 1 book right off the bat. Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins is just the best book I've ever read in my entire life. I mean, that book is just truly life-changing, and everyone who's in some kind of a rut, or even if you're just on a high, like anyone, no matter what phase of life you're in, you've got to read Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. He's just phenomenal in his life story and the things that he endures and the way that he physically like shapes his mind in order to believe that he can do anything that he can do. That book. And honestly, I can recommend YouTubers and podcasts and everything all day, but that book truly was the one thing that like also was just like, you're on the right track, like keep going. Like, I mean, he's just been through so much that like, honestly, like no excuses. You just got the thing, like give yourself a break and rest when you need be, but like, you got to keep going in the direction that you believe that you should be going on, no matter what, no matter who's saying whatever to your face, no matter what obstacles come in the way, there's always going to be obstacles. So just deal with it. And yeah, so that book, 1000%.
Awesome. I'll be sure to include that in the show notes as well. So, sure. Great to hear about your inspirations. Now let's flip the coin on the other side. As you look back on, the past few years, you kind of gone down this journey of on your own, betting on yourself. It's fun to talk about the successes, but what have been some of the low points, some of the things that looking back, either you regret or knowing what you know now might have done differently? What are the lessons that, you had in that journey over the past few years?
Yeah, I think again, so I'll go back to confidence, because I think that when you are such a big like motivator of your own self and you're your biggest cheerleader, which you always should be, it's difficult because sometimes the cheerleader gets tired. Like she's just kind of like, I'm kind of. Yeah, I mean, even yesterday, like cheerleader got tired, girl. Like I was just like, no, not the day. And I mean, I really only say like you fail when you decide to quit, when you just choose to stop, because you feel like you're not getting somewhere. Failure, on the other hand, it's like, I mean, you fail every day. Like you burn your eggs, you do whatever you do, so it's like those small things, that's okay. Like it's a learning curve. It's a learning experience. But I mean, I feel like some of my lowest points were just when I've exhausted my own self mentally. I burn out. I'm just doing everything and not seeing the results that I know that I should be seeing from the hard work that I'm putting in. And it comes back down to just a lot of, taking that rest. But honestly, last year, I feel like I got too much rest. So I was too hard on myself. Like I was way too hard on myself for getting too much rest. Like it was just, it made no sense. And yeah, so I think that a lot of my battles that I had to face were very much like my own mental battles and just me overexhausting and me just, burning out and just getting too tired. I mean, like when you're the one person that like believes in yourself the most, like it doesn't matter almost like who's telling you that you're going to be fine and everything's going to be great. It's like, if you're hard on yourself and you kind of like go against yourself, it becomes this like, whoa, hey, like, I can't, whatever. So yeah, so I will say that was definitely, I've had a lot of low points. It's hard to, pinpoint when was like the lowest point. Like nothing really happened to me. I've been very lucky to, during COVID to like not lose anyone and just, just being healthy still. So, I mean, I just flip it always back on like gratitude and just be like, I'm so glad to just still be here and still playing the game, So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, it can feel like walking a tightrope sometimes, I'm sure, of like,
definitely.
the balance between rest and like doing right by yourself and also like pushing yourself to the next level. So it sounds like you've navigated that well and learned some valuable lessons along the way. So I want to bring it back up to speed, like present day. What's something you're working on right now or that's coming up next for you that you are most excited about?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I just made the huge move to LA, so I'm here. That was a lot. I mean, honestly, that was the biggest thing for a while now. So now it's like, okay, next thing. And right now I'm just working in the direction that I want to go. There's nothing super like huge where I'm like, yeah, like let's do this. But also I have tons of projects and ideas and whatever that I want to get rolling. I want to turn my podcast into a book. That's like a huge thing that I've been like, let's do that. Like, that's amazing. I just feel like I've got so much to say from someone who isn't exactly where I want to be yet. Like I'm in the place that I want to be right now, but I have so many goals and whatever that I want to achieve. And I think so many people who have made it already are the ones who write the books. And it's just like, okay, like, but also someone from like the place that's like still on that journey, still on that trek, I think would be really cool for like a young adult audience and whatnot. So yeah, like that's a goal of mine right now. So it's like writing a book pitch, doing all that, continuing with my YouTube channel journey. My YouTube account got messed up, so I had to start all over from the beginning. Oh, I forgot about that. That was a huge battle that I had to endure at the beginning of this year. YouTube had really awful issues and no one was able to help me fix it. So I had to start over my entire channel from the bottom. And yeah, just continuing my podcast and just doing everything out here acting wise with my team. And yeah, just the normal workload.
just the normal have 10 irons in the fire. No, that's awesome.
Right.
That's awesome here. Well, I appreciate all the different insights that you shared and the story that you've shared so far. I want to bring it home with like the $1 million question, which is like for all the other, young adults out there, young professionals out there who feel like, they're on a path that is like the conventional linear path and they're thinking about going and doing something else. They're just contemplating, hey, is there a different way for me? What advice would you give, 17-year-old you or somebody else who's on the fence, who maybe didn't have the level of self-confidence that you had at that age? What advice? What's the one thing that person needs to hear, based on your experience?
Yeah, two things. Spend time alone. And that's harder. That's easier said than done, just spending time alone. And I mean, just having little wins for yourself that make you feel more and more confident each day. Confidence comes with practice. It's something that you practice. It's something that you continue to get better as you keep going. And maybe there might be a point in my life where I don't feel as confident. Maybe this takes way longer than I thought it was, or like something. I don't know what my life is going to look like, but it's about just keeping up with yourself, like keeping up with yourself mentally and not focusing so much on everybody else. I mean, social media, it's so hard. I do this like for work as well. So it's like finding that balance between, oh, is this leisure or is this work or is it like, what am I doing? Am I just scrolling just because? And like finding that medium and everything, and people who don't even do social media, I can only imagine just spending hours and hours scrolling per day. It's like, you're not alone. You're not spending time alone. You're spending time figuring out what so-and-so is doing or what so-and-so celebrity influencer is doing. And you're not focusing on what you want to do. So spend time alone, like TV off, music off, like silence. Like that's scary. People don't know how to be alone with themselves. And that's really scary for some people. I know some people who can't like do anything without music or like anything, like period. They can't be alone. They always have to have a friend over. Because it's scary to be alone and not know what you want. So yes, I would say that it's hard, but it does the job.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for sharing your story. Where do you want people to follow you, connect with you, check out your content? I know you've got your YouTube channel. What all platforms do you want to send people to?
Sure. My YouTube channel is Jada Jones. If you type it up, it'll come up. And my Instagram is at Jada Jones with 3 S's at the end. And then my podcast is called High Key Adulting. And that's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Jada. It's been an awesome having you on Self-Directed. For all the listeners out there, we will be back again soon with another episode. So stay tuned and we will see you later.